RTM. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Kate Ambrose, John Jones, Mary McCullough, Keith Varian, Bill Gerber, Tim Lynch, Eric Newman, Cindy Parham, Heather Dean, Alex Durrell, Robin Orris, Ron Pine, Jen Hochberg, Aaron Lopez, Phil Pierce, Liz Ezema, Josh Garskoff, Ruth Smay, Carol Way, Jay Wolk, Matt Ambrose, Hannah Gale, Ray Newberger, Janice Solomon, Tom McCarthy, Mark McDermott, Jill Vergara, Karen Wackerman, Hank Ferentz, Pamela Iacono, Christine Messina, Pete Tolman, Brian Farnan, Drew Georgiadis, Ken Lee, Bill Perugini, Sam Cargill, Paul Fatterbean, Michael Hurley, Eric Sunman.
Will you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. If you could all please take your seats. I'd like to invite the Friends of the Bigelow Senior Center who are here this evening. They just want to give us a brief update on what they've been doing, and I promised them some time. You can use this mic. If it's easier for you to use the podium, you can.
Testing. Good evening, everybody. My name's Curtis Bentley, and I'm the treasurer of the Friends of the Bigelow Center for Senior Activities. And we just want to take a moment to introduce you to our great group here and give you some background information about the Friends of the Bigelow Center for Senior Activities. Friends of the Bigelow Center is a new 501c3 nonprofit organization. Our mission includes raising funds for the Senior Center, enhancing and supporting programs for seniors, and advocacy. The Senior Center is a jewel for the town of Fairfield. Friends will be reaching out to seniors and the intergenerational community to encourage them to participate in the many events and programs offered. We, the Friends, and we have some board members over here, say hello. We're all volunteers who work closely with the staff of the Bigelow Senior Center, and we have the director, Terry Giegengak, sitting there, who runs a great senior center. So since June, when we officially became a nonprofit, we have sponsored a volunteer luncheon, provided dinner and refreshments in the fall for the caregiver support group, and co-sponsored the tree lighting ceremony and dinner. And this year, this past October, we had our first fundraiser called the Magical Music Cabaret in October. It was so successful, so well received, that we sold out in a matter of days. It's going to become an annual event to help raise money for the Senior Center. Each of you has not received a brochure, I can tell, but I think we mailed you one. The brochure looks like this, and we invite all of you. It describes the friends in the program. We encourage you all to become a friend, attend our fundraisers and sponsored events, and join us in supporting our Senior Center and our valued population of seniors. And I'd like to thank the First Selectman for mentioning the Friends in his State of the Town address last month. Thank you. Any questions?
We did get your information. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And we were at the Senior Center this weekend, the Bigelow Center, excuse me, this weekend for an open house, and it was quite
Excellent.
informative. Thank
Lots
you.
of programs. Keep your eyes and ears open and support the Friends. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Next item is to consider and act upon the minutes of the regular meeting held on January 30th, 2017, moved by Representative Dean, seconded by Representative McCullough. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Representative Wackerman. Item passes. Item number 3. To consider and act upon the following appointments as alternates to the Historic District Commission as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Arthur N. Gravanis, Republican, 2829 Bronson Road, term 2014 to 2019, to fill a vacancy for Christopher Shea, who was appointed as a full member. And Rosina Negron, unaffiliated, 952 Old Post Road, term November 2016 to 2021. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Representative Perugini, seconded by Representative McCarthy. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, any comments from the public? Back to the body. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item carries. Thank you to both Mr. Garanis and Ms. Negron for serving. Item number 4, to consider and act upon the following appointments to the Solid Waste and Recycling Commission as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Andrew C. Becker, Republican, 228 Buena Vista Road, term November 2016 to 2020. Hugh F. Dolan, Republican, 1775 Congress Street, term November 2016 to 2020. May I have a motion to approve? Moved by Representative Dean, seconded by Representative McCarthy. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, any members of the public wish to speak? Back to the body. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item carries. Thank you to Mr. Becker and Mr. Dolan. Item number 5, resolved that in accordance with the request from the Director of Public Works, that the Town of Fairfield accept the following as streets as recommended by the Town Plan and Zoning Commission. Ennis Lane, Guiden Lane, High Point Lane, Maylands Road, Mayridge Road, Michaela Circle, Olivia Place, Pansy Circle, Patricia Circle, Sconset Drive, Southport Ridge, Southport Terrace, Stonewall Lane, West Morgan Avenue, Wesley Lane. May I have a motion to approve? Representative Zagara, seconded by Representative Durrell. I understand that there is an amendment to this item. Representative Orris.
I would like to make the following amendment. Resolved that in accordance with a request from the Director of Public Works, that the Town of Fairfield accept the following as town streets as recommended by the Town Planning and Zoning Commission. Ash Creek Boulevard, East Lee Lane, Fogwood Circle, High Point Lane, Michaela Circle, Osborne Lane, Rolling Hills Drive, Sherwood Farm Road, Split Rock Road, Stonewall Lane, Wesley Lane, Bluebell Lane, Ennis Lane, Fulling Mill Lane, Maylands Road, Midlock Road, Pansy Circle, Running Brook Circle, Southport Ridge, Springer Road, Walben Court, Cricker Brook Lane, Evelyn Street, Guiden Lane, Meadow Ridge Road, Oliva Place, Patricia Circle, Sconset Drive, Southport Terrace, Still Meadow, and West Morgan Avenue.
Is there a second? Representative Farnan. Thank you. Is there any discussion? This was just to add the streets that were left off the call. Any discussion on the amendment? Representative Dean? Just on the amendment?
Representative Dean, District 3. Through you, Madam Moderator, to, I'm not sure if it's our engineer.
What's the question?
The question is, are all of these streets that have been added, including the streets already in place, able to accommodate emergency equipment?
That
and
would be on
plus-
the main motion, Representative Dean. We're on the amendment to
Okay,
add in the streets.
On the streets that are being added, then I'll ask the other question later. On the streets that are being added, are they able to accommodate emergency equipment and including town plowing?
Mr. Tetro, is there someone from your department that can help? I see Mr. Hurley's here too. I'm sorry, I didn't see.
Hi, William Hurley, engineering manager. All the streets that are presented have been approved by the Town Planning and Zoning Commission and are currently being maintained by DPW, so they are being plowed already. The fire department signs off as part of the process, and they all have cul-de-sacs that can accommodate emergency vehicles, with the exception of one or two which have approved what they call hammerheads. But yes, they can meet that criteria. Sure.
Any further questions on the amendment? Seeing none, does anybody else from the public wish to speak to the amendment? This is to add these streets. Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The amendment carries. Back to the main motion. Is there, as amended, is there any discussion on that? Representative Dean.
Representative Dean, District 3, same question for the streets originally listed on the item.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anyone from the public? Back to the body. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention. Items carries. Thank you. Item number 6. To consider and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Finance. Whereas, a resolution entitled, "A Resolution Appropriating $1 Million for the Costs of Town's LED Lighting Program and Other Comprehensive Energy Conservation Measures," and authorizing the funding of such appropriation was approved by the representative town meeting on December 19th, 2016, and whereas the town is only going to receive a grant of $269,697 rather than $500,000, and the total cost of the project is now $769,697 rather than $1 million. Now, therefore be it resolved that the resolution approved by the representative town meeting on December 19th, 2016 regarding the $1 million for the LED lighting program is hereby rescinded, and a resolution entitled, "A Resolution Appropriated $769,697 for the costs of the town's comprehensive LED lighting program and other comprehensive energy conservation measures, and authorizing the funds of such appropriation be and hereby is approved." Moved by Representative McCullough, seconded by Representative Orris. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, anyone from the public? Back to the body. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item carries. Excuse me, I'm going to need to get water. Item number 7, to consider and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Finance. Resolved that a resolution entitled, "A Resolution Appropriating $2,859,433 for the costs associated with the replacement of the Commerce Drive State Street Bridge over Ash Creek, authorizing acceptance of a grant to fund $2,759,433 of such appropriation and authorizing the issuance of bonds to finance $100,000 of such appropriation, provided that acceptance of the grant is contingent upon the town receiving from the City of Bridgeport its commitment to make the required contribution to the design phase, be and hereby is approved." Moved by Representative Garskoff, seconded by Representative Hochberg. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, any comments from the public? Back to the body. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item carries. Item number 8, to consider and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Finance. Resolved that a resolution entitled, "A Resolution Appropriating $2,003,000 for the cost of certain non-recurring capital projects and authorizing the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriations be and hereby is approved." For clarification purposes, this is the 20-year bond, Holes Farm Highway, Burr Mansion, Kitchen, Rooster River, H. Smith Richardson, Ward AC, and the Tomlinson Roof. May I have a motion to approve? Representative Orris, seconded by Representative Gale. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing Representative Dean.
Representative Dean, District 3. Through you, Madam Moderator, to Mr. Geely, would it be possible to have, given the scope of the project and the amount that's being associated with it, if we could have an updated report, say in 90 days, on how that project is coming along?
I don't see Mr. Jelly here tonight. Mr. Michelangelo's here. Maybe you could speak to that. I do know that Mr. Geely had already agreed to give us an update, but however, if you want that into the record, maybe Joe could speak to that.
Yes, Mr. Jelly can speak about the program and the need for the kitchen. I'll just touch on the construction that's going on there now. I know there was many RTM members that took a tour of the facility over the weekend. The construction project for our STEEP grant and some community development block grant money is nearly completed. There's some remaining items to go, just removal of some windows, fire escapes, and some plumbing, but I'd say it's about 95% done, and will be definitely closed out within probably 30 to 60 days. So a report on what we've done thus far and what we've accomplished is able to be done in that time frame.
Thank you very much. Representative Dean, how would you like to receive that report?
It would be appropriate, or I would like to have Mr. Geely here or a representative to answer any questions that may come forward. I guess it would be in writing, so it would come to the body, I'm assuming, but I would like him also to be here if we have any questions.
Okay, so it's February, so March, April, May.
Sure, that would be great.
Okay, May or June, can we have a little bit of wiggle room there with May or June?
Well, we're in February now, well, at the end of March, April, May.
Only because it's budget.
Fair
May.
enough. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on the Burr Kitchen? Representative McCarthy. Excuse me, just so I don't forget, can the clerk please make a note to remind us to get a report?
Tom McCarthy, District 7. I was hoping that Mr. Jelly would be here tonight. I had asked him for a payback period, and as dovetail on that question, revenue from the use of the Burr Mansion, I was curious where that money goes to. Does it go to the town, or does it go to the Historical Society? And since Mr. Jelly is not here, perhaps Mr. Mayor could answer the question, both in the payback period and the where the financing, where the funds derived from the use of the Burr Mansion ends up.
Mr. Tetro, do you know where the funds from the Burr Mansion go, how that works, and what the payback period is? Excuse me.
I believe the funds at the moment go to the Fairfield Museum. They use those for maintenance, that type of thing, because they manage the properties for us. They also, was this body presented with the budget in terms of what the annual budget is for that? Because each year the museum presents us, the Board of Selectmen, with a budget in terms of what takes place, and I was wondering if you had.
We saw a report, but what we were specifically looking for was projected incremental revenues as a result of the upgrade of the kitchen and associated costs they would not have to bear for bringing in tents and so forth. Kind of a business plan. What he had told me informally on Sunday, that the payback period is 7 years.
Yeah, the payback question I will leave to Mr. Jaley. The question of where the money goes, I tried to answer for you earlier.
Did. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up on that, actually. And just the money then that goes to the Historical Museum, pardon me, but then that specifically, they use that to invest back into Burr. Do they earmark it that clearly, or am I getting too deep in the weeds?
I believe at this point, historically, we haven't been generating enough money off rentals to cover the costs of it, so there haven't been excess funds, so that hasn't been a question. As this happens, this money, as defined in our agreement with the museum, is dedicated to use on Burr Mansion for maintenance, and the idea is to get it up so that the town is not tasked with putting additional money in every year, that the money raised, the revenue raised, would cover the costs of maintenance. We spent about 30 years not doing anything. It's really the last 2 or 3 years that we've actually put money into Burr Mansion, and that's why a lot of this funding has come before this body, as we've looked at that. basically all deferred maintenance. The goal is not to let that happen again, and if we can get to the point where the rental fees cover the basic maintenance of this, then we'll be in very good shape.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Representative McCarthy, you have a follow-up?
So just to clarify and to play back what I think I just heard, the incremental rent, the incremental revenue represents to some extent funds that the town would not have to put back into the Historical Society. I'm sorry, into Burr. So in a sense, it becomes an expense not incurred. Very good.
Any further questions on the Burr Kitchen? Representative Hurley?
Isn't it about the entire resolution?
No, we're going through each item.
Okay. Can I?
If you want to speak to the kitchen, now's the time.
Well, I want to speak overall,
Right now, we're just on the, he had a question about the kitchen.
but it's an overall.
Okay, so we're done with the kitchen? Does anybody have any? I'm on the kitchen.
I have a point I'd like to make about capital non-recurring. Am I allowed to make that?
No, not right now. Representative Tallman.
Hi, Peter Tallman, District 8. Just a quick question for clarification. Unfortunately, Michael's not here, but in just looking at the numbers, we're hoping to get up to 150 events, and he said, that might take 2 or 3 years to occur, and we're hoping to get $2 million revenue, which is great, but the average revenue we get per an event is about $2,000 in rough numbers. If you have $2 million in 150 events, that's $13,000 an event. So these numbers aren't making sense to me, which would put that payback period in jeopardy, I would think. But if you get a chance to look at it between now and the next meeting, great, because I'm a little confused by this. That's all. Thank you.
Hold on one second. First Selectman Tektro had just wanted to get clarification.
If I could ask, just to clarify, is that the $2 million impact on the local economy that Mike was talking about? Because
Well,
that's not income to the town, because you're right, we don't rent the facility out for anywhere near enough to generate that kind of money. I think that was from the business report that the Sacred Heart grad students did. They looked at the impact in the overall economy and said by running events there and running that many events, when you add in all the local vendors and everybody else that gets involved, there'd be a $2 million estimated impact on our local economy. But that is not money that's, and Mr. Jaley has just arrived. Your timing couldn't be better.
We'd like to have a word with you, please.
Mr. Jaley, I've been stalling up here at the mic, and I'm going to turn it back to the moderator.
If you wouldn't mind, please, coming forward, we have several questions.
We went through the first
We're
half
very
fast.
efficient here, or we try to be. Representative Tallman, do you want to?
Way too efficient. I apologize.
Well, I don't know, it's only 8:30. Representative Tallman, do you want to repeat your question for Mr.?
Let me repeat to Mike since they heard it. We're looking at 150 events per year. Once again, we're looking at 150 events a year, and I must have misunderstood this. I thought it would be bringing in $2 million annually.
No,
Okay,
that's related economic.
okay, because that came out to like $13,000 an event, and I know we only average about 2.
Right,
So,
so the calculation for that.
Use the mic.
I'm sorry.
come on.
You guys caught me all off guard. So that is related economic activity to the town of Fairfield as calculated by the graduate students at Sacred Heart, was the $2 million. So it's not direct revenue, that's related revenue
Do
to,
you know what the direct revenues might be?
um,
Would it be more along the lines of $300,000, 150 events times 2? I'm just asking, I'm not questioning whether it's good or bad.
Got to use the microphone.
right.
I forgot my question. Okay, so the $2 million is separate. There's another number I imagine we have of what we hope to get annually from rentals and stuff.
Right.
My guess is that's around $300,000. I'm kind of putting you on the spot, I know,
No,
but
that's roughly correct, yeah.
tough world out there.
So right now, the operation of the Burr Mansion actually costs the town of Fairfield money because the town pays for repairs, it pays for utilities and things like that. So our immediate goal is to make it a cost-neutral facility for the town, and then to increase revenues on top of that so that the money can then in turn be plowed back into the property for ongoing repairs and to offset other costs for the historic properties on the town green. So,
Stay there.
any other questions?
Further questions? Representative McCarthy.
Hey.
Mike, while you're getting out of your car, I'd asked.
I apologize.
I'll get even somehow.
Fast. I mean, I was.
Well, we're economical word and phrase and sentence and paragraph alike. I'd asked for the payback period, and I'd given you an overture Sunday that I would ask you that question.
Right.
So you'd said that time you figured the incremental revenue generated as a result of enhancing the kitchen would effectively those revenues would offset the funding in about a 7-year period. Is that still your understanding?
Yeah, so thank you. So based on that question yesterday, I did look again at the numbers, and I feel pretty confident in that the payback for this investment that we're talking about tonight would be, I think easily accomplished in 7 years.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Representative Farnan.
No. I'm prepared to speak on that, too, if you want.
Brian Farnan, District 9. And I apologize, I would have brought this up at committee, but it was my 30th birthday, so I was not here.
30 plus, is that?
We rounded down. But in all seriousness, in these tough budgetary times, I really do struggle with this allocation. With I think it was something like $750,000 over the last few years that we've used rightfully to renovate Burr. I still struggle for why this could not have been accomplished within that pot of funds. So if you could help me there, because I know I don't have the vote that's going to pass, but just from my own perspective, I have a hard time and do not plan on voting on this because of that.
Sure. No, I think that's a legitimate question, and I think, again, to keep it in context, that's not $750,000 that the town of Fairfield has allocated for this. So the initial $150,000 in emergency funding that this body voted 2 years ago allowed us to leverage an additional $625,000 to be able to accomplish all we did. This is a historic structure, and it is complicated to do all the things that we did. We had to do some structural work. We had to do asbestos and lead mitigation. The other thing is, I was explaining to the RTM visitors that I gave a tour to yesterday, $500,000 of that funding was through a state of Connecticut STEEP grant, which had very sort of onerous requirements for it. One of the onerous requirements being that the contractor had to be state approved, had to be prevailing wage, and all the other things. So it did cost more than it would, sadly, normally with that money, just because we had to abide by all the state requirements. And the pool of contractors that are available to bid on those jobs is small. We would have loved to have done all this Phase 1 work in that, and our goal was to do that, but I think I feel pretty confident that we accomplished a lot and that we were very efficient with the money that we did get to do all that we did. So.
Any further questions on the Burr Kitchen? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Good, thank you. Thanks for letting me sneak in on
You're very welcome. Representative Hurley, I believe you wanted to speak to the bonding matter.
Michael Hurley, RTM District 10. As I said last year, the year prior, and I think the year prior to that, I disagree with the capital non-recurring being separated from the budget vote. I've talked in the past from a capital budgeting perspective how there are certain items you want to put a little bit more fiscal discipline on department heads by having them actually allocate a small percentage of the significant down payment on these, maybe 1 or 2%. There's a lot of challenges. We know we have the issues with the state. I think more than ever, this should be part of, and I'm sorry if it means the RTM meeting, for 2 nights. I think it's our responsibility It doesn't mean I'm not going to support these items tonight, but from a process standpoint, I just continue to disagree with it, and I would like it to be noted.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion on this item? Seeing none, anyone from the public wish to comment? Back to the body. All those in favor of this appropriation signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Representative Farnan, Representative Perugini. Abstentions? None. Item carries. Thank you. Item number 9, to consider and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Finance. Resolved that a resolution entitled, "A Resolution Appropriating $335,000 for the cost of certain non-reoccurring capital projects and authorizing the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriation be and hereby is approved." Just for clarification, this is the 5-year bond for Board of Ed security upgrades. Moved by Representative Pines, seconded by Representative McCarthy. Sorry, I saw someone with their hand up.
Could we just roll back? Did we vote to vote on these appropriations separately? Because we just voted on the kitchen.
We know you voted on the entire resolution.
Thank you.
The 20-year bond. Right now, we're on the 5-year bond. No. Oh, you want to you want to change your vote? You can. You voted in the affirmative. Did you vote in the affirmative? No. I misunderstood. Okay. Okay. All right. On the 5-year bond, it was moved and seconded. Any discussion on the security? Seeing none, anyone from the public? Back to the body. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item carries. Number 10, to consider and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Finance. Resolution, that a resolution entitled, "A Resolution Appropriating $2,275,000 for the costs of certain non-recurring capital projects and authorizing the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriations be and hereby is approved." And for clarification, this is the 10-year bond, South Benson Marina dredging, Tomlinson Middle School turf field, Ward turf field, and the Blake tennis courts. May I have a motion to approve? Representative McDermott, seconded by Representative Hurley. Is there any discussion on this item? Representative Gale. Sorry.
Hannah Gale, District 6. I actually would like to propose an amendment to Resolution 10 to subtract from this bond the amount of money that would cover both the turf fields, which comes to $1.25 million, from the $2.275 million, and amend this so that the amount would be $1,025,000. And my reason for this, making this proposal, it has come to my attention that there is a current EPA study that is ongoing on these crumb rubber fields that is going to extend through the summer of 2017. And the reason for this is because it has become, it has been brought to the public attention because of these cases in Washington State, where they discovered 38 soccer players had come down with cancer, 34 of them goalies in the Washington area, female goalies, I believe most of them were, I'm not sure about all of them, and there's Hodgkin's lymphoma that has resulted, and the reason for this seems to be that there is an ingestion of these tiny little tire crumb particles. The EPA has already, from its multi-agency report, released a list of all of the many of the chemicals that are found in these crumb rubber tire fields. It's extensive, and it's going to get to be a much more extreme report once they do this study over the summer, because it is the summer heat that then causes a lot of the off-gassing of these chemicals. Some of the chemicals that are in the tires are things like benzene, lead, mercury,
No,
arsenic.
Representative Gale, it's my
Yeah.
fault, but procedurally, I need a second before you get into your
Oh,
argument.
sorry. So,
Is there a
yeah.
second? Representative Matt Ambrose. Thank you. Continue.
Thank you. I really apologize. Okay, so I have a son who attended Fairfield Ward, loves the field. I understand the argument that the kids want to play and that these fields are important to the kids, but I really feel like there is a moral imperative here. We're not talking about shins being scraped or, you know, small injuries. We're talking about a pattern of cancer. Public health things like this tend to come all at once. Everyone used asbestos, and then suddenly it became clear. I think since there is such an enormous issue going on right now, that there is a moral imperative that we wait until we find out at least what the EPA study says. And if there's a moral imperative, I think that there is then some sort of a legal obligation. You know, we can't say we don't know that this is going on currently.
Thank you. Just for clarification, it's to remove the Tomlinson artificial turf and the Ward Fairfield turf, and you're saying
From this bond at this time until the completion of the EPA the multi-agency EPA study.
and that is, you're saying it's due out in...
At the end of 2017 summer of 2017.
Okay, so August timeframe possibly.
Yes.
Okay. Is there discussion on this? Representative Tallman.
Hello again, Peter Tallman, District 8. It sounds like this is new news to some people in the room. This material's been around for about 15 years. They started doing tests on this back in, I think, 2008, 2009. I did read the report about the school in Washington. And that coach of that school, it's funny how it's just in that one part and nowhere else in the country, but be that as it is, that coach said, there's no study has shown any link between the surface and any health risk. I want to make sure you understood that and you heard that. The coach of this Washington team said there is no study has shown any link between the surface and any health risk. And I have another question, I guess, to further that. These new alternative materials, have we done testing on them? Does anybody know?
I see Director Calabrese is here. Would you like to speak to this issue?
Mr. Calabrese.
Do you know if there's been testing done on alternatives?
Currently, the alternatives have not been around long enough for there to be additional testing. The crumb rubber is the most tested item that's out there. It is the industry standard. As far as coconut and the cork, there's additional costs with that, which I believe everybody had seen my answers over the weekend and more again today. So I could, again, answer any other questions that you guys may have. But to my knowledge, there currently are no other studies going on.
Okay, so that tells me we're going to ask the taxpayers for $800,000 to repair 2 fields with an alternative material that we have no information on. That doesn't sound prudent to me. Be that as it may. The Ward Field, I was on it in November at the Thanksgiving football game. It was the worst turf field I've ever been on. I've been coaching off and on for 35 years, longer than Brian's been around. All over the Northeast, in Hartford, New Haven, in cities, in the country, it was the worst field I have ever seen. That field needs to be replaced, or they should not play sports on it this fall. I don't know what the time frame is to get a field done. I'm sure it's not a matter of a few weeks, but if we want the field ready for September, we have some quick work to do.
Mr. Calabrese, do you know the timing of that?
You should just stay up here.
I'll hang out with you. Anthony Calabrese, Parks and Recreation. The time frame, obviously, if we get the approval tonight, we'd put that out to bid. We'd work with purchasing. The plan is to bid Tomlinson and Fairfield Ward together, in addition with the tennis courts as a package of 3. We would want to get all that construction done this summer. That is the least disruptive time to do it. If we put this project off, Tomlinson will come offline. There's no doubt about that. Ward, I'll let Mr. Cullen speak to that. Maybe they can finish the spring season. That would probably have to come offline in the fall. Where we would put these teams that need to play on there and the high school athletics that need to take place, I don't know. Again, I'll leave that for the Board of Ed, but the time frame ideally is the summer. Again, pushing that off, we would have to take everything offline in the fall, and it's just not ideal for us, and I don't think that you're going to find anything new in the EPA studies, but that's yet to be seen.
I have a son who plays sports. My biggest concerns with him playing sports are concussions, torn ACLs, torn rotator cuffs. The furthest thing from my mind when I'm watching him play in the field is the crumb rubber. Maybe I'm being ignorant. I don't think so. I've read dozens of articles about this. Not one has ever said concrete evidence says this is damaging. I stood before you a few months ago talking about the lack of professionals, this one regarding the building committees, and not a builder on a building committee. We're now getting information from the internet, from the public through Facebook, and from students. This is not what I think is going to the sources that we have for us. I've talked to Mr. Calabrese. I've met with both athletic directors at Ludlow and Ward. I've met with coaches at Ludlow and Ward. I've met with the former athletic director from Ward. I've met with Anthony. Not one person has a concern about this. So, if there is a concern about sports in the town, I just heard about this weekend, and I'm probably getting off case, so you're going to cut me off. But I just found out this weekend Pop Warner is going from a 1-year program to a 2-year program. What that means is not only are 9-year-olds going to be playing against 9-year-olds, 9-year-olds are going to be playing against 10-year-olds. Now you're talking about the possibility of somebody 23 months older than your son is going to be playing football. That is not a good idea. Football is not an easy game. If you want to do it in baseball and play up against
You have
older...
to tie that into the turf, otherwise you are off topic.
All right, well, back to the turf. I did notice that there were some municipalities, I think there were 5, that outlawed this, and I've heard conflicting reports about that from people that live in Hartford and are familiar with New York City. There are 39,000 municipalities in the country. I got that off the internet. We're talking about 5 that have outlawed it. I'm going to go with the majority. Thanks.
Thanks. Are there any further questions on this item? Representative Vegarta.
Is it on? Thank you. Jill Vergara, District 7. I have to respectfully disagree with Representative Tallman. I am not an expert, but I did really try to read everything I could access this for the past few days. And what I've come to the conclusion is that we don't know enough about any of these materials. That's true. We don't know enough about crumb rubber, and it's categorized as a hazardous waste. That in and of itself tells me that we should not be allowing our children to play on this. There are plenty of reports showing the negative impacts on potential negative impacts on health. Again, I'm not a toxicologist, I'm not a medical doctor, but there seems to be a tide change right now. And I really feel like we're seeing the writing on the wall as if we're on the cusp of an asbestos-esque event. And knowing that there's an EPA report, a multi-agency report forthcoming, knowing that California is conducting a very comprehensive research into this, It's supposed to be released in 2019, knowing that 2 Yale toxicologists have decided that this is one of the most important issues to research right now is persuasive to me. I'm deeply concerned about the issue. And yet, after reading all these papers, which actually I did find very helpful to have these policy briefs written, and I'm sorry that you didn't think it was, but I thought it was a great resource, and I was really happy that I opened this debate up more publicly so that we found out that we have such amazing resources here in Fairfield, that we have these amazing professors here in Fairfield that actually know a lot about it. There's a professor here in Fairfield who has testified 2 times at the state level on this very issue of a moratorium. And I think that we should be using them. She's this one professor, Professor
Representative
Sarah
Agar, please.
Felice Evans, has counseled.
To the point of turf.
Okay. As for Representative Gale's amendment, I, as you know, have been going back and forth about what to do about this. I also went to the fields and saw how degraded the material is. And they're just in such poor disrepair that I worry that we're subjecting the kids to more harm by postponing. I think that it could be more a more serious immediate health risk to the kids if we delay even a year. So I cannot support Representative Gale's amendment just because I think that they really need their fields right now. I can't have them playing on the fields as they are now for longer.
Thank you, Representative Walk, then Representative Perugini, Representative McCarthy.
Representative Walk in District 5. First, I want to say thank you to my colleague, Representative Jill Vega, and Representative Gale, because I'm going to be supporting this. It's not that I'm not against a study. My question through you, Madam Moderator, to Mr. Calabrese, you could sit there. Let's say, I know the field's life expectancies are 10 to 12 years, basically. So let's say 10 years, let's say 6 years into, first of all, we're going to have to do the fields, but let's say 6 years into the fields, the EPA or whoever does the study comes out and something comes out of this that there is something wrong with this, the rubber. At that point, does it get like if we went to like the other alternatives at that point, can it be taken up and put down the new alternatives? Yes. It can. So, to that point, we don't have any alternative where the kids are going to play. The fields are in disarray. They need to be done. It needs to be done now. If a study, Jill, comes out and it is against it, then we can bring it up then and then go and address it then. But right now, if we delay it, then what are we going to do? We're going to close the fields down? I mean, Fairfield, Representative Gale is absolutely right. I was on that field. It's a mess. And our kids are playing on it. So I'll end it on this, that I would be supporting this project.
Meaning you're not in favor of postponing? Understood. Representative Perugini, then Representative McCarthy.
Bill Perugini, District 9. I acknowledge all opinions. I respect those put forth because they have a strong basis in intellect and fact. So thank you for all of your preparation, Representative Vergara and Representative Gale. What compels me is science. And I haven't seen to date any level 1 evidence that assigns causality or any sort of correlation with crumb rubber and any adverse health events. Level 1 peer-reviewed evidence that shows causality. So to date, if there's anything I've missed, I would love for Director Calabrese or anybody to share with me that peer-reviewed level 1 evidence that assigns causality from crumb rubber to any adverse health issues.
By the fact that you're not moving, Director Calabrese, I assume that means there is none in existence that you are aware of. Thank you. Representative McCarthy.
I don't see Mr. Cleary in the audience, so perhaps through you, Madam Moderator, to Anthony Calabrese. I know this came up in subcommittee, and as I recall, and perhaps you can correct me if I'm wrong, when asked the question, our Director of Health, Mr. Cleary, said that there was no conclusive evidence indicating that there's a level of carcinogenic that represents a problem at this point in time with the use of chrome rubber. Is that your recollection?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on this item? Representative Hurley?
Michael Hurley, RTM District 10. Through you, Madam Moderator, I see we have two members of the Board of Selectmen here. This one is to the first selectman. I know that you voted in favor of the turf fields, and this was obviously prior to some of this new information, but given that you're in the role of CEO of the town, I was just curious, would you vote in favor of this amendment, or is your recommendation to just proceed as you did on the Board of Selectmen?
My concern, much like Representative Tallman's, having been on the field and seeing the level of age and damage to the field and the status it's in, I think the choice comes up to one of either closing the fields because of the health risks to our kids, and then waiting to do whatever we want to do, but either we have to address the concern of the fields, because I think the risk of injury is greater now with not redoing the fields than doing it. And some of the dates on the studies, I think, were 2019 and a little ways out, just because studies are finished, to Mr. Representative Perugini's point, that you may not get the peer review and some of the other add-on studies you need to define the definitive causal link. And I forget who said it, perhaps Representative Tallman, that there have been studies going on since the mid-2000s, 2005, 2006, for about 10 years, and we haven't defined that definitive causal link yet, at least not in the material that was circulated to this body and that I had a chance to read along. So that's a long way of saying no. At this point, I would not change my vote.
Thank you. I agree with the first selectman. I'm going to vote against the amendment to reduce the bond resolution.
You could have stopped after the first three words.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this item? Representative Dean.
Representative Dean, District 3. I just want to make a couple of comments. I don't have a question. First, I'd like to applaud and thank Representative Gale for making that very bold move on in thought for the safety of our children and coaches. I really appreciate it. That's good for you. That's hard to do in front of everyone when we want to try to get this moving along. I will not be supporting the amendment because I think we need to get that we do need to get that report in. And I'd like to know that this body is going to take affirmative action, and the Board of Ed and all the other bodies, that if something does come back, that we need to change it, because it's not safe that we'll do that. I also wanted to remind the body of our past practices with toxic problems in our school systems, namely McKinley, that we had to tear down and rebuild because of a failed roof, and also the PCBs that we had to deal with at an incredible rate of ripping out and rebuilding at tremendous cost. And the safety of the children and the staff was first and foremost, and we did that. So I do want to see what happens with the EPA and find out what happens on the report. And I want to know that this body, I can count on you to be responsible and to take affirmative action should it come back not favorable. I won't vote, I will not support the amendment because I know we do need to have safety first with the fields as well. So I think that we all are on the same page with regarding this. Thank you.
Anybody else who has not spoken to the matter who wishes to speak to this item? Representative Way.
Carol Way, District 5. Madam Moderator, or to Director Calabrese, I would like to know about the possibility of going with the natural turf once again, at least for a few years, until this is cleared up a little more.
Anthony Calabrese, Parks and Recreation. To tear out the turf field and reinstitute a grass field there would come with probably a heftier price tag than we're facing right now just to replace the turf. I don't have the numbers offhand. I can get them. But again, I don't remember which representative it was. Someone asked at the committee meetings in Fairfield County how many towns have ever gone from turf to grass, and when my department contacted every town in Fairfield County, nobody ever has gone from turf to grass yet. Right, exactly. And I'm not saying that there's not going to be a time where that happens, but to this date, that has never happened. The trend has been the other way, and right now there are 0 grass fields in the FCAC as far as football and soccer go. So.
Right. I knew from the committee meeting that you had talked about maintenance of it being an issue, and that, the hydration of it and things of that sort. But, with this question being brought up, and with our not hearing about studies until 2019, I did wonder if there was any alternative, at least for a few years. But obviously you're saying that this would be too costly to try and go back to that.
Well, I'm not saying it's too costly. I'm not the one that makes those decisions. That's you guys. Again, we put forward a request that we believe in. The crumb rubber is what we've had. Until there's scientific proof that says otherwise, that is the preferred method in the field. Again, funding is up to you guys. If you guys wanted to double the money and go with a coconut fill that we've got to install, irrigation for and all that, we can do that. But so there are alternatives. No, I understand. You're looking.
I wanted to know if, at least temporarily, if you went back to a natural turf, if that was a possibility, and if so, what kind of cost would be involved, and would it be something where there would be, less of a chance of injury or more of a chance, or?
I can't answer those questions at this time without the numbers in front of me. So I can get them for you, though.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else who has not spoken to the item wish to speak to this matter? Anybody else wish to speak? Representative Gale, Representative Agar, just so you know, it doesn't look like the votes are going to pass, so if you can please be quick and brief in your remarks. Thank you.
For Hannah Gale, District 6. First of all, I just want to say I respect everyone's opinions, and I understand why you're making the choices that you're making. I just do have to say that although, there's no peer-reviewed study on crumb rubber per se, but we are talking about rubber tires, and we already know for a fact that the chemicals in them are carcinogenic. There is no doubt that benzene is carcinogenic. There is no doubt that aromatic hydrocarbons are carcinogenic. And we all know what lead and mercury and other heavy metals do. That's all I have to say.
Jill Vergara, District 7. I would like to request that if we do go with this crumb rubber, that we're able to request from the distributor or the supplier that it be tested for lead and sampled. I read that you have that ability before it's installed. So that would be helpful for the public and the public perception, I think, to have that testing. Sure.
Thank you. That's a great question, but as with any construction project, that testing will be done automatically right from the get-go, so we can assure that.
Thank you. Anybody else on the amendment to remove the turf fields? Seeing none, any comments from the public regarding removing the turf fields? Yes, you may, if it's about removing the turf fields. Just introduce yourself, your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Sarah Evans. I'm a Fairfield resident. I live at 63 Fox Street. I have 3 kids here, twin 2-year-olds and an 8-year-old who goes to Roger Sherman. And so I'm here tonight to speak really on behalf of the Children's Environmental Health Center at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. I came in a little bit late, I apologize, and I think that Jill was referring to some of the work that we've done at Mount Sinai, which includes advising communities on the installation of crumb rubber turf fields and also some of the alternatives. So we've worked with Greenwich, Westport, Guilford, Hamden, also been testifying at the state level on this issue. And so I don't want to take up too much time because I think that you have discussed this rather thoroughly and some of the evidence has been presented to you. I just want to reiterate that Mount Sinai, which we have I'm an instructor in the Department of Environmental Medicine and Public Health there. I have a PhD in neuroscience. I have a master's in public health. I did a 3-year fellowship in environmental pediatrics there at Mount Sinai. So we are very much devoted to investigating the early life environmental exposures and how they impact health and disease. So we have received inquiries, much like you are investigating tonight, from many communities actually across the country who are rightfully concerned about the exposures that their kids are experiencing on turf fields. And as they're coming to the end of life, as you're seeing, they need replacement badly. And we recognize that that's a safety issue. So in response to this, we've done sort of our own review, and about a year ago, we did publish a moratorium, request for a moratorium. What I just want to tell you is that the idea of waiting for a causal link to be presented is kind of like making guinea pigs out of your children, and this is the way that we operate in this country on many issues. And so what I would say is that what we have found, and the EPA, Center for Disease Control and Protection and Prevention, and the Consumer Product Safety Commission have found, is that there is a lack of evidence to prove the safety of these products. And we know that they contain toxic substances, as has already been mentioned. And I just want to point out that the studies that have been done by the Connecticut Department of Health and others have looked only at whether off-gassing of chemicals may lead to cancer in an exposure modeling scenario. No one has looked at exposure through oral routes or dermal routes or through wounds, and no one has actually looked in the bodies of children to see if they're having increased exposure to these compounds that we're worried about. So these studies have not been done, and that's why we haven't found a causal link. So we really can't rule out that that these fields are not safe. So that's just my professional review of the scientific literature. I will tell you that it is very lacking, and that is the conclusion that's been made by the pediatricians, clinicians, industrial hygienists, and research scientists that I work with. I realize that you don't have an easy task ahead of you, but I just think that you should be abreast of what we're currently dealing with, and we can't guarantee the safety of these products.
Thank you very much for your comment. Back to the body. Any further questions? Seeing none. All those in favor of removing the turf fields from the bond resolution signify by saying aye. Please raise your hands. Representative Gale, Representative McCullough, Representative Matthew Ambrose. Are those opposed? Signify by saying no. No. Abstentions. The motion fails. On to the next. Is there any other further? Oh, abstention. I'm sorry, Representative Way. Okay. The clerk caught you. All right, we're now back to the main motion, which is 2.275 for the issuance of bonds, and that is for the marina dredging, Tomlinson artificial turf, Ward turf, and the Blake tennis courts. I believe we have discussed the turf. Is there any discussion on the marina or the tennis court? Seeing none, any members of the public wish to speak to this item? Back to the oh, I'm sorry, there's a member of the public. Once you go to the public, if no one speaks, you can't come back. So lucky for you, this guy's coming up. You can now. Please introduce yourself, your name and address for the record.
My name is George Michael Harrington. I say that because most people call me Mike and hardly anybody knows my first name is George. I live at 93 Rolling Ridge Road. I've been a resident of Fairfield for 43 years, and I've been in South Benson Marina for 40 years. I'd like to review a brief bit of history and then speak specifically to the safety issues involving dredging. In 2007, the marina rates were increased 15%. In 2009, another 11.5%. In 2011, they were increased 20%. And in 2015, they were increased 10%. That is a compounded rate of increase of 69% in less than 10 years. Throughout that period, there has been very little maintenance performed on the marina and no capital projects. And I am quite certain the marina has operated all those years in the black, and all the profits have gone to the town general fund. Now, specifically with respect to dredging, at low tide in the channel to the marina, there is barely 3 feet of water depth. I don't know, how many boaters do we have out here?
We don't actually answer questions, if you could please, please make your point.
The response was about 5 raised hands. A large sailboat in that marina draws easily 5 feet of water. So at low tide, a large sailboat, and we're talking about the biggest boats, the ones that cost $250,000 to $500,000 and weigh 25 to 30,000 pounds, cannot get in or out of the marina for roughly 2 hours either side of low tide. Now, low tides vary. Some low tides are 3 feet lower than high low tides. To give you an example of an interesting low tide, last summer on July 4th at 5 p.m., we had the lowest low tide between Labor Day and Memorial Day for that summer, July 4. Now, I've heard a lot of discussion here about safety and injury, etc. And I want you to picture a 30 to 35 foot boat with a couple of their kids and maybe a couple of their kids' friends that weighs 25 or 30,000 pounds and is in a line of boats going out of the marina roughly 3 to 5 miles per hour, and suddenly it runs aground. Hopefully, the stopping of the boat will not result in anybody being ejected from the boat. But I can tell you that the boats behind, you don't stop a boat like you stop an automobile. You can throw it in reverse, but if the tide is against you, then you're backing against the tide.
Can you please wrap it up and make your point?
This is one of the most significant safety issues, in my opinion, that this town faces. And people in a marina with big boats, I recruit 100 boats a year for Swim Across the Sound, and they're starting to tell me that they're going to leave the marina, which contributes the most boats to the swim of any organization around here. And they're going to leave it because they can't get full use of their boats.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing your comments. Back to the body. Are there any comments? Representative Perugini.
Thank you. Bill Perugini, District 9. Thank you, sir, for your opinion. That's great information. I'm a boater as well, even though I wasn't supposed to answer that question.
And I just wanted
thank
to
you
say
for,
we technically don't.
Dr. Evans, thank you for that feedback. Fantastic. I mean, great information. Thank you for your preparation. So I struggle in this challenging budgetary climate, appropriating $700,000 for the marina. I, too, have a strong interest in safety. I'm chairman of Public Health and Safety, and I've had an extensive dialogue with Chief McCarthy. Based upon what's been shared with me, and I'm also part of the Coast Guard Auxiliary Flotilla 77, and our data suggests that there's about 5.5 feet in the harshest and the most challenging conditions in that channel area. And I'm convinced, after the information shared with me by the Chief McCarthy, that rescue vessels can indeed make it through that channel to rescue distressed boaters if need be. So that's my primary concern as well, whether rescue vessels could navigate that channel in the harshest conditions. But I would just like to hear from, I guess, Director Calabrese or whomever is responsible for the other reasons why we want to dredge. I'm convinced that that's safe. Now, it might be challenging for sailboats, granted, but as you know, those waters outside the channel are treacherous. They are horrendous. So I think sailors who navigate those waters are conscious of that and cognizant of the challenges, and also make the right decisions when entering and leaving the harbor based upon tidal conditions. So anyways, I struggle with this because it's $700,000. And we're in rough waters financially with regard to our budget. So I would just like some additional information on the rationale for dredging. Thank you.
Joe Michelangelo, Director of Public Works. We had a engineering company last spring do a bathymetric survey, the depths at low tide, and this is the channel coming in and out of the marina. So one of the worst cases is the filling of the channel is on the inbound side. So along here, along the opposite side of our fishing jetty, on the inbound lane, so to speak, we have depths that are under 5 feet at mean low tide. And as Mr. Harrington said, we could have depths that are 1.5 feet lower than that on the extreme low tides. So that's where the problem occurs, the worst problem occurs. Right now we have a channel marker right about over there, which signifies that you're in a low area there. And what happens is it's literally and more will turn into a one-lane road where the inbound boats will have to more and more frequently go into this area over here. We haven't done a thorough channel dredging from this point all the way down since the late 80s, I believe. And we are getting dangerously loaded to those depths. The number, I think, is 60 boats that are with 5 to 6 feet draws. So it is affecting a significant amount of our boating population and at significant time. So more and more, if we don't do anything, boaters will have to watch the schedule and once again be out of business for 2, 3, 4 hours, and it's going to increase on both of the low tide cycles.
So your position is that the conditions will get worse and worse and worse, and now's the time to...
Correct, and the loading mostly comes through the Ash Creek. So like all rivers, they transport sediment. So it's a lot of the boaters, it is coming in from this way a little, but we have a source of sediment. All rivers transport sediment, so it'll keep coming and won't get any better.
So the point is, it needs to be done. And now...
Representative Perugino.
Correct. Yes, it needs to be done.
Where is the end of that fishing pier?
The end of the fishing pier is right about over here. It comes out of that thing. So we would go about 500 feet beyond the end of the fishing pier. But once again, the worst part is probably along the land areas over here on the Bridgeport side. It's in Fairfield, but on the east side or incoming side.
Representative Farnan. Sorry, we're done with public comment, sir.
This up here.
No, we're done with the public comment, sir.
Sorry about that.
Brian Farnan, District 9. Until we know what's happening at the state level, I understand the rationale and the reasoning for this dredging, but I just cannot support this $700,000 expense when we'll be talking about, in just a couple weeks, potential cuts to vital services, including education. So it's all about weighing priorities. It's a tough budgetary year. I don't think we really understand how hard it's going to be until it comes upon us and what we may potentially lose at the state level. So I cannot support this. Thank you.
Representative Walk, Representative Michter.
Question? For me or?
Yeah, well, it pertains to you two. Representative Walk, just quick. If we don't do this, how many more years can we go without this? Through you, Madam Moderator, to Joe.
With the permitting of this, we're probably looking at a late winter, or next winter will be the time that it'll be done. And as far as how long do we go? Like I said, we are affecting boaters now. Once again, so the amount of boats that'll be affected and their time limitations will continue to grow and grow. And once again, we do have it'll more and more it'll turn into a one-lane highway, and it'll stretch out from longer and longer. So eventually it'll be pretty much the whole opposite land side will be all one lane or restricted lane.
Representative McDermott, did you have a question?
Mark McDermott, District 7. I'd have to disagree with Mr. Harrington's complaints about the rising cost of the docking here in Fairfield, because I'll tell you, I look at the prices, and this place is a bargain. I am a boater myself, so I do know. And I would have to also disagree that the marina runs in the black, because if I look at it, between the winter storage and the docking fees and everything else, we had a budget item, it's around $637,000. So between pumping $700,000 into dredging, which I will support because the safety is more of a concern to me than bonding this over, 20 years or so. But it's going to have to be done again, depending on the weather. Next, there'll be new docks will have to be replaced at some point. Pilings will have to be replaced. This is all going to add up to money. Not everybody in town gets usage out of this marina because they don't own a boat. There's a 10-year waiting list. There's plenty of people in line to grab a dock space here. So I will be supporting this. I agree with Mr. Farnan. There are tough times right now, but I think if the fees probably need to be raised, they should be, and it should support these kind of numbers, because $700,000 is a big number. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who has not spoken to this issue? Representative Pine.
Ron Pine, District 3. This marina is a gem in Fairfield, okay? My understanding is that the revenue to the town is $650,000 a year. So over 20 years, it's $13 million the town's making, okay? It's a safety issue. Just July 4th, we had a sailboat that was stuck in the middle of the channel because it was ran aground. So I'm just urging you to support this. It's a revenue maker for the town. It makes the town of Fairfield, it's a gem for our town. It attracts a lot of people. And $700,000 over 20 years, when we're making $13 million, I think it's a no-brainer. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak to this item? Seeing none. Are there any other items on here? The only one we haven't talked about is the tennis court. Anyone wish to address that? Great. All those in favor of the motion to approve the $2.275 million signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Representative Gale. Abstentions. Representative Farnan, Representative Hurley. Item passes. Next up, the moderator has referred amendments to the noise ordinance, Chapter 78 of the Code of the Town of Fairfield, sponsored by Ray Newberger, Brian Farnan, William Perugini, Sam Cargill, to the Legislation and Administration Committee. No action has been taken on this item. It's being held over in committee. Is there any other matters that you wish to bring before the board? Seeing none, motion to adjourn. Representative Wackerman, Representative Orris. Thank you.